Today I am going to show you how to create a Python program to read different files, to read and write different files. So computers use file systems to store and retrieve data. Each file is an individual container of related information. What if you have ever saved a document, downloaded a song or movies, even sent an email, you have created a file on some computer somewhere. Even a file I am creating in Jupyter Notebook is also a file. This is what a file. A Python script that I am editing on Jupyter Notebook is also a file. So, uh, uh, So a Python program, so how we interact with files using a Python program. So we are going to learn how to read and write different kinds of files using Python code. Let's say we had a file called fds.txt. For example, here we had a file fds.txt file that contains a text So how can we interact with these files and read the content of these files using a Python program? So we could read this file using Python program by writing a Python script. Before that, we use different functions to read a Python file. So in this, we will use functions, the following functions. That is open function to open a file, read function to read the content of the file, read lines. This is another functions methods of read file. The other is read line function. So those we will use those functions to read the content of a file. Now we are going to create a Python script to read the content of the fds.txt file. The fds.txt file. So this file is stored in desktop. In the desktop here, you can see the path of the file, home, no, the desktop, then the file name. The Python script also saved in the same directory that is called desktop. So we don't need to provide the path when you open the file. Then we follow steps to create file. The first step is what we use with statement to open the file fds.txt and then save this opened file object as any file object name we can specify. For example, in this case I use fds file. This is object name. Then the opened file object is saved in this fds file object. Then we can create a new indented block where you can read the contents of the opened file. Then first, then with open, then we can specify the file name fds.txt, because the file name and the path of the file name and the Python script also in the same directory, so we don't need to provide any path as any object name fds file. Then we can this open files opens a file object called fds file and creates a new indented block where you can read the contents of the opened file. So we can follow step 2, that is what read the contents of opened file, the contents of the file fds file ማለት ነው። then we can then save the resulting into fds contents variable, fds file. Then we use a read function to read the contents of the opened file and store the result into the variable fds contents. Read function. Now the file is opened and the file also read, and the resulting of the file is stored in the fds contents. The third step is what printing the result. Print out the fds content. We can use print function. Now we can run this program and it will display the whole contents of the file. Here we can see here, this is the contents of the file we have created in the text file. So this is the Python script to read the content of a file, text file. So this is all what we then read the contents of the file, this file using this. Now the second one is what if we want to iteratively print the content of the file, because in this file there are different lines of text. So we can iteratively print the lines of the file. So how can we iteratively print? We can use another function that is called readlines. So it can read the each lines of the file content. In this case, so when we read a file, we might want to grab the whole document in a single string, like read function with return in the upper. But what if we wanted to store each line in a variable? We can use the readlines function to read a text file line by line instead of having the whole document. So suppose we have a file fds.txt that contains 4 lines of file content. So we can read each lines by line using a Python script. First we open the file fds.txt and save as in the fds in the objects or any lines like this. For each line we read through each line of the file we read the line. So for line through lines fds lines, we use the function readlines in this case. So from this we can print each line by line. Now we can print this statement and we can see the output. This printing out all line by line of our file content. This is what we can iteratively print through lines. So sometimes we don't want to iterate through a whole file. For that, there is a different file method that is called readline. To read a single line, if we don't want to print out the whole lines in this case, but we want to print the first line from our file, we can use a function is called readline. Readline. So now first we open the file and we can save this opened file as object line. From this, now we use a single read function to read a single line from our file. So we can save, for example, if we wanted to read the first line, that is what learn Python for. This is the first line from our file. So we can read line dot read line. We do not use read lines function. The read lines function is used to read the whole files and from our document, but this is to read the first line from our document. To read the second line, we can use second. We can store in the second line read line. Then we can print out print first line. That printed out the first line from our document here. The second line is data science. We can print out the second line here. Data science is the second line here. So we can add one more code line to read the third and fourth lines. For example, third line fds line dot we can print third line. This is what how do you interact files using Python script. How can we read the whole document? How can we iteratively print the line by line, and how can we read a single line from our document? This is all about today's lesson. So the next time we will learn how can we create a file using Python script. Thank you for watching. This is